Hi, I'm Peter Cowan, the Bee Whisperer. It's really snowy outside, just looking out the window here, and this time of year beekeepers will spend their time making equipment. Now for some of you, you may not have actually ever made any of this equipment before, so this might be helpful too. But basically it's some of the things that we can do to pretend we're playing with the bees, but in absentia. The other thing to watch out for when you're assembling these boxes, regardless of the size, it does depend on which manufacturer makes them, but the ones I sell at any rate. The only thing that you can do wrong in terms of making these boxes is putting the handles on the inside, not the outside. So being sure that the handles are on the outside, then we just get busy pushing things together. Otherwise, it's very easy to put together. Even the nail holes are drilled in, so you can't really go wrong. I suppose the only other thing that you can regret is if you use nails which are a bit too thick, you may tend to split the wood a bit more than you would otherwise do. So try to use, I use a 6D galvanized common nail. It's relatively thin, but this works out very well. So what I just do, I go around and put a nail or two in each corner, just to make sure we start closing up the gaps. And then once I've closed the gaps, then it's just a matter of putting in the rest of the nails. I think it takes about 45 to 50 nails to assemble the super. So while we're knocking these together, I suppose there are a few other things. What would make a much better video if I was painting this as opposed to assembling it, but maybe that'll be the next video, who knows. Otherwise, the other things I could tell you about is, for example, tools. Smoker. The most important tool that you will have in the amongst your equipment, apart from your protective gear and the beehives themselves, will be something like a smoker. Smoke has two effects on bees. One, when bees smell smoke, they fill up with honey. Exactly why, I'm not sure, but a good way to think about it would be they assume they can smell smoke, therefore there might be a forest fire and it might burn the tree down. It's a good way of thinking about it. But the smoke, a bee full of honey is a bee is going to be much calmer than a bee who's not full of honey. But more importantly, smoke seems to also block the transmission of alarm pheromones. So that's chemicals that the bees release into the air, which tells one bee a bee that's frightened will release alarm pheromone. That will let other bees know something's wrong, something's dangerous, be on alert. So blowing smoke into the hive will keep all the bees calmer for much longer. With a smoker, the key thing with smokers is to get them lit and burning well and getting the right fuel. Other tools that you're going to want to have is a hive tool. This is I think it's a 9-inch hive tool, a blade at one end and like a crowbar at the other. Hive tool is going to be more or less a permanent feature of your hand. It's a beekeeper will have a hive tool in his hand the whole time, or her hand. There's another style of hive tool with a J hook here, that's for prying frames out of the hive, and blades on the other side here. I always used to use this type of hive tool. Now I love this type of hive tool. Maybe next year I'll be liking another type of hive tool, but they are all extremely useful. Whatever design you choose, don't hesitate to try out different ones. But hive tools will be like an extension of your hand. You're going to permanently have a hive tool in your hand. Basically, those are the two most important pieces of equipment that you're going to have. Next thing you might have is a feeder. This is an entrance feeder, but this is basically, you fill this with sugar syrup. In the spring we use a mixture of 1 part sugar to 1 part water, and in the fall we use 2 parts sugar to 1 part water. Basically, when you fill up that 2-quart jug, turn it over, it'll fill this little well with sugar syrup, and then you can stick that in the entrance of the hive. There's pluses and minuses about using that style of feeder. In the spring, it's probably the simplest and the a very useful one to use. During the fall, that style of feeder can promote robbing, so you may want to invest in another kind of feeder, which we'll talk about in another video. Having food at the entrance during a time when there's a food shortage, that's when robbing can be an issue in the beehive. So I will quickly get this hive assembled. So there we are, all done. Okay, I'm going to assemble some frames here now. So I normally sell my frames packed in bundles like this of top bars and bottom bars, and the side bars, different size side bars. So I'll take the top bars and bottom bars first. What I'll do is lay them out, do them all at once. Now, if you're really organized, you could make yourself a jig, that sort of thing, depending on how many you need to make. I'll put the bottom bars in. So notice I make all these frames upside down to start with, because everything stands upright fine like this. So now we've got the 10 frames made, they're ready to put together. Now it may be a good alternative. When I'm making thousands of frames like this, I'm using a staple gun, typically, like this. And I put a couple of staples in the most vulnerable corners. You may want to put glue in these corners as well as nails. If you're using just nails, and for this you might use a fencing nail like these, or otherwise known as a wire nail. And I would put 2 in this top bar joint. Problem with wire nails is that they bend so easily, so you want to be knocking in your nail good and straight. 2 seems to be okay and doesn't tend to pull out. But if you're just using 1 nail there, you'll find that when you pry them up with your hive tool, they tend, because they're glued down so well, you'll tend to pull the top bar out of the bottom side bars. So a drop of glue there might be advisable. And typically, because this bar is under very little stress, typically I will put just the 1 nail in there. But you could put 2 in there as well if you wish. So that's ready to go. Now, the best Christmas present ever, if you are making lots of frames, is a staple gun. I use 1 1/4" staples. And and any that didn't go in all the way, just a quick knock with the hammer and over. But on the top bar I'll put in 2. So that's the same as putting 4 nails in the top bar. That's why I don't bother gluing them. Okay, foundation, putting in the foundation. If you're using beeswax foundation, see, it's very flexible and floppy. So it's a little more delicate. You don't want to do this at low temperatures because the wax is very brittle at low temperatures. But the problem with the wax is also that it's not quite straight. So it takes a bit of fiddling around to get the wax into the grooves. And obviously, if you're making hundreds of these or thousands of these, it's time consuming. So once you've got the wax in the top bar here, then you press in. Push in a bit till it's in place. Now the foundation is in place, but it's still a bit soft, a bit floppy. And so in order to secure it in place, I'd use bobby pins. So a bobby pin will go into the holes on the side and go on either side of the wax there. And you got to make sure you put it all the way through. Don't have anything sticking out there, or it'll be in the way when you go up and down. Lift the frame up and down. So bobby pins, that's okay for putting in wax foundation. But as you can see, it's going to take a lot longer. However, what I'm going to do is something a bit different. I'm not going to use plastic foundation. I'll leave that. Sorry, wax foundation. I'll leave that for my customers who like it. Instead, I'm going to use plastic foundation. A lot tougher, a lot easier, and always straight. Just put it in till it clicks. Done. Now with plastic foundation, it's vital that you have a really good coating of wax on there. If you don't have a good thick coating of wax on there, the bees will not build the comb straight, or may not build on the foundation at all. So in a future video, I'll show you how to fix foundation that is not got sufficient wax on it, or if it's been in the hive and the bees have tracked that wax off, how you can sort of make that foundation good again. But that'll be for a future video. But in the meantime, we'll just get these done. So there we have it, the complete super. So there's complete super. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please subscribe to the channel by clicking the subscribe button down below, and like it if you like it, share it with friends. And over the next few months I'll be making more and more videos that I hope you'll find more and more useful. Thanks a lot. I'm Peter Cowan, the Bee Whisperer. See you next time.